Hi, my name is Matt Pillischer, and I am an attorney and a mediator with the Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation. And this is one of our divorce educationals that we offer the first and third Wednesday evenings of every month around 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock. And I'm the host, and we often have co-hosts or guests who are experts in various fields relating to divorce. We often talk about parenting and divorce, taking care of kids and kids' impact during divorce, how to take care of yourself and your family, finances and divorce, as well as the differences between litigation and mediation. Tonight we're going to be talking about some of the frequently asked questions about mediation. So I'm going to be explaining our mediation program at the Alpha Center and talking about some questions that potential clients often have when our attorney mediators do consultations with people. And we do free consultations that are an hour long and a great wealth of information. So if people are considering divorce, we do very much recommend you take advantage of that free hour consultation to learn a great deal with one of the attorney mediators that could sit down and meet with you in one of our various locations across Southeast Pennsylvania, Colorado, and New Jersey as well. So tonight, I would like to talk to you about some of the questions that come up. And if you have any questions or comments, please type them in and I'll be able to see them and I can address them. Again, I'm an attorney and a mediator at the Alpha Center. So my role is to sort of lead people through the transition of divorce, along with a team of experts that we have. I usually tell clients, you don't want to get divorced with just a lawyer. And sometimes people do, and they spend lots of money on attorneys. And when you're doing work with the Alpha Center, you're getting a team of professionals, including attorneys, therapists in some cases, if you have kids, to help you make decisions about what's in the best interest of kids, financial advisors, and tax accountants to help you with tax ramifications of divorce, because most attorneys are not accountants and not tax attorneys. We also have great support staff. So you're really getting a fabulous team when you're signing on to a mediation program like the Alpha Center. Now, something to explain is that not all mediation is the same. So pretty much anyone can call themselves a mediator in, well, I should say in unlicensed states, in the state of Pennsylvania, for example. A mediator may not necessarily be an attorney. You need to be very careful and sure about the exact services you're getting when you're hiring a mediator. Sometimes mediators will help two parties come to decisions, but there will not be any kind of advice to them. So you're not really making educated decisions unless you put together your own team. And oftentimes they will not help you through the divorce filing process, the court process to actually end your marriage and get divorced. Oftentimes mediators will not actually write up the legally binding agreement. And so oftentimes you do mediation and you have to then go hire attorneys to draw up the legal paperwork that was the foundation was laid in your mediation sessions. Now, with our program, you get all of that and more. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that. People often ask, is mediation binding? Can it be enforced? And through our program, and whenever you have a signed legal agreement, often called a marital settlement agreement or a property settlement agreement that both parties sign, that's done at the end to memorialize all of your decisions in the divorce settlement process. And when you sign that document, that is a legally binding agreement between the two of you. But we also guide you through the process of filing your court case with the courts to actually get divorced, to get an order from a judge saying your marriage is dissolved, is over, and your agreement essentially becomes a judge's order. So it is all legally binding. If somebody does not follow your agreement, the other party can take you to court to have it enforced. We find that parties that complete a mediation program and go through this transition with a lot of education and making decisions together, and where you feel like your voice is really heard and you have the professional support you need to make the best decisions, that you're going to be more likely to follow the agreement. So fortunately, there is a lot less arguments after the fact in court, and we certainly encourage people to handle any disputes about their agreement that may happen down the line in the future, talking about custody or a pension or whatever is in the agreement, to handle those disputes via mediation as well, because it is, for the most part, so much healthier. You feel more invested in the actual outcome and more likely to follow it, and it's certainly going to be more inexpensive. People will often ask us, how do your rates or your charging, do you charge by the hour? How does it compare to the way attorneys work? Because attorneys have a very expensive hourly rate. You often give them a multi-$1,000 retainer just to get started before you even walk in the door for a consultation. And then they're going to be drawing down on it by the 10th of the hour every time they talk to you, every time they read or send an email, every time they lift a finger for you. Here at the Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation, we have a very different model, and we have a flat fee that we found is much better for clients trying to plan out this transition and really know what you're going to pay for the divorce process. So you are going to be quoted a fee in your consultation, and some of it depends on your situation. There are some variables, but you're going to get a flat fee quote that each party pays, or you can pay together, and that is all you're going to pay to the Alpha Center. Unless there is, you need to get extra mediation sessions, which rarely happens, and we try to plan in the beginning in advance. You're getting several mediation sessions. You know exactly what you're getting. You know the team of people you're going to be working with, and the fee does not change. This is a very different model, and we found it really works well for clients. There are payment plans, there are payment options that you can discuss with the Alpha Center if you call the 800 number 310-9085. I should say our website is alpha-divorce.com, and you can find a lot of great information there, and what I'm about to go through, our 7-step program that has been developed over the 20 years that Alpha Center has been around and pioneered divorce mediation in this area of the country. The mission of Alpha Center is to provide families with excellent legal, financial, and parenting guidance, thereby empowering them to intelligently navigate their divorce transition and establish the best quality of life possible after divorce. So I think that says a lot about who we are and how we approach this very difficult time in people's lives. Many of us have gone through divorce ourselves. I've been sitting where you're sitting, where many clients are sitting, and gone through divorce. and many of our staff has. And we even have one of our past clients who is now one of our great attorney mediators. So that says a lot. When you're having a consultation, you're going to get this explanation of the 7 steps of the divorce program here at Alpha. And I'm going to give you a quick rundown of that and talk about some of the frequently asked questions in each of these steps. The first step is the consultation, is educating yourself about how you want to proceed. If you decide you are going to get separated and want a separation agreement, if you decide you're going to get divorced, sometimes people come into consultations and they're not sure, and that's okay. Sometimes people come in and their spouse isn't fully on board, but we do need both spouses to be there in order to do the consultation, because one of the working foundations of mediation is neutrality. Is the mediators that you're working with are totally neutral, are not taking sides, and even though your attorneys, mediators will give you advice and talk to you about the law and try to educate you about the law, even though the accountants will talk to you about the tax consequences, even though the parenting therapists will help you decide and talk about what's in the best interest of your kids in terms of custody arrangements, they are not taking sides throughout the whole program. They are educating you, and as professionals in their field, they're talking to you about various aspects of the field: finances, the law, taxes, parenting issues. And then as mediators, we are helping you make decisions. First, we're helping you voice what your concerns are, what your priorities are, and then we're helping you come to an agreement. And we are very good at doing that. 85% roughly of the people who start our mediation program complete it. And so that gives you some sense of how good we are at mediation. And of the 15% that don't finish, about half of them end up reconciling and staying married, and the other half move on to some other form of divorce. And it's a good time to explain your various options for divorce. And there's also on our website, alpha-divorce.com, some explanation of the various ways to get divorced. So mediation, for the most part, is, I think, the best way to go through this transition. Probably the majority of people hire 2 lawyers, a lawyer for each party, and sort of battle it out through their advocates. Now, there's only a small percentage of divorce cases that actually go to trial. So eventually, after months, a year, sometimes 2-3 years of lawyers going back and forth charging you $200, $300, $400 an hour, and tens of thousands of dollars later, you're going to end up settling the case anyway and having to come to agreements anyway. So litigation often is not the best way to handle this. It also can be just a very stressful and agonizing way for families to be dealing with this very difficult time in their lives. As much as possible, you don't want to drag children into this, and I think for the most part, that is a priority of the clients that we see, the people that we see come through our doors. They really want to keep the best interests of their children in mind. And even though most everyone wants that, unfortunately in the litigation process, a lot of times kids are dragged through this and are impacted or traumatized. And kids do not have to be traumatized through a divorce. A lot of kids go through divorce. And you need to decide what's the best way to go through the transition that will have as little impact on the children, or as little negative impact on the children. So in step 1 of our program, hopefully you're finding out about these different options. There's mediation, there's litigation, there is collaborative law, where some lawyers are fed up with litigation and decide they will go straight to trying to come to an agreement with the other side. And so you're sort of almost mediating through lawyers. Still very expensive. And sometimes people choose to do arbitration, which is something, or something similar to arbitration, which is essentially where someone acts almost like a judge. You present your facts, your arguments, and a professional, oftentimes a lawyer, will make a decision that then the parties agree to follow no matter what that decision is. So it's similar to litigation in the sense that you're not in control of the decisions, and it can be costly. You may get orders from judges to sell a house or sell a piece of property or a custody order, things that you're not happy with, and you have to follow them. That is the law, that is an order. And so you lose a lot of control in a process like litigation. With mediation, the decisions are totally up to the two parties involved. And having control, even though you have to make the ultimate decision with your spouse, soon to be ex-spouse, you are not giving up total control of the final outcome. And I think that that's another thing that clients really value in our mediation program. So you're going to learn a lot from this consultation. You should come in person. If you sign on with the Alpha Center, step 2 is, if you have children, is a parenting mediation. And you're going to have a professional who works with families and children, who is trained as a therapist, to do a mediation session with the two parents, to talk to them about what they think is in the best interests of their kids, what they think their kids would be best doing in terms of custody, spending time with each parent. The kids are going to be seeing both parents in almost every situation, so you need to come to some kind of agreement with that. You're also going to need to think about the very minute details of drop-off, pick-up time, if kids are sick from school, who's dealing with that when, vacations, holidays, birthdays, if either party, that is either spouse, is getting into a new relationship, what are the ground rules for introducing new relationships to your children? These are all things that can be talked about with a parenting professional, and they, as a mediator, would help you decide and lay the foundation for a co-parenting plan, a co-parenting agreement, to begin your life living in two separate households, the children moving from two households. People often ask, what are arrangements for custody? You can get very creative, and you can do anything that the two of you agree to. So sometimes there will be a 50-50 split exactly. It can be a week on, a week off. It can be 3 days here, 3 days there, and then the 7th day goes back and forth each week between the two parents. Or you can have where one parent gets the majority of parenting time. Let's say one person has been the stay-at-home spouse and is staying in the marital home and they decide they want the kids to be able to go to school in the same district, and so it's easiest for them to be in the house that they've been living in with that parent from Monday through Friday. That happens a lot. And then on weekends, they'll go see the other parent. So in that case, you have sort of a split of time where one person has them a little bit more, the other has them a little bit less. Primary and partial custody is one way to explain that. So the first session will be going through and working out some of these basic decisions about the kids. Step 3 of our program is a financial mediation. And this one is with your attorney mediator. So this one, we have all of your financial statements that are relevant. We ask them to send, for you to send all this information to us on bank accounts, on real estate, on debts, on loans, on property. We give you a full list of things and follow up with you so that we have all this information that's needed to go into the financial mediation session. And it's the two parties with the neutral attorney mediator. The attorney explains various portions of the law to both parties, answers questions, looks over your property, your assets, and your debts. And one part of this step 3, the financial mediation, is determining, beginning to make the decisions about how you're going to divide up what is called your marital estate. And that is all of your assets and debts from your marriage. And marriage and divorce law is different from state to state, but for the most part, what you're looking at is all the things you acquired during the time you were married. And for the most part, they are considered both of yours in some way. In some states, courts may divide things more 50-50. And in other states, they may divide things according to what is equitable, which means what is fair, and that isn't necessarily equal. And there is no real prescription or formula in the law that is easy to look up to say, okay, in this situation, this person gets the house, this person gets the car, this person keeps their business. So that's why you need either an attorney or an attorney mediator to advise you on what the law is and what a judge is likely to say, what lawyers are likely to argue. Another component of step 3, the financial mediation, is looking at child support or maintenance and spousal support or alimony. And what are the various factors in the law where courts may award alimony, and what is the rationale behind child support, and how is that calculated? So those are some of the things that you would be talking about and making the basic decisions of in the financial mediation session. After that, there's step 4, which is a tax mediation. And that is with an accountant, a CPA, and oftentimes people will get divorced and don't really look at the tax consequences until it's done. And unfortunately, people often lose out if that's the case. And so the tax step can be really crucial. So an accountant will look over some of the basic decisions that you've made in the financial mediation to make sure you're transferring assets, dividing things up in the smartest way tax-wise, or explain to you, educate to you what the tax ramifications are of different pieces of property, debts, etc. They'll also look at incomes and cash flow, withholding from your paycheck, and what's the best way to handle withholdings moving forward to increase cash flow. They will look at the past 3 years of tax returns to make sure that you're properly up to date so that no kind of liability is hanging over you, or that you're not missing out on some kind of refund that could occur if you did an amendment. There are tax ramifications to alimony, and oftentimes people don't understand that or don't know exactly what it means, so this is something that the accountant is going to go through. They will give a full tax analysis, they have an in-person session with you, and then they provide a written analysis to you and to your attorney mediator who's handling your case. At that point, your decisions have been made, you've gotten some legal analysis and tax analysis, and then it's up to your attorney mediator to draw up a draft of your marital settlement agreement. So that's all of your decisions couched in a whole bunch of legal language, worst case scenario language, I usually say. So you make a decision that one spouse is going to refinance the house and buy out the other person. Well, you can put that in an agreement, but what if the person doesn't end up getting a refinance? They can't do it. Or what is the time period for the refinance? And if they don't do it by a certain time, what is the alternative? So oftentimes, lawyers will help you, your attorney mediator will help you think through worst case scenarios. And if you can't refinance within a certain time period, 6 months, a year, then you will be forced to sell the house and split the proceeds in some way. As one example of a worst case scenario that may be written into a draft to discuss with the parties. So a marital settlement agreement may be anywhere between 20, 30 pages long, and it has some confusing legal language, and so you have another mediation session that we call a working draft mediation, and this is where the attorney mediator explains the agreement draft that's been written. We'll talk to you page by page, in some cases paragraph by paragraph, to explain in plain English what everything means and to make sure it's as the two parties intend. There may still be questions, clarifications, changes, additions, things you want to take out, and that's the purpose of the working draft mediation. Shortly after that, you should have a very good draft that is almost ready to be signed by both parties. Hello to our viewer that just tuned in. I'm Matt Pillischer, I'm an attorney mediator, and I'm talking about the mediation program at the Alpha Center, some frequently asked questions about mediation, and the different steps in our 7-step program. So after an agreement has been reached, an agreement has been written up by the attorney mediator, before you sign, oftentimes people will ask, well, can I get a second opinion? Is there a way to have my family lawyer look at it? And so before parties sign the agreement, we do recommend that they hire an outside attorney just for a few hours of time, maybe 2 hours of time, to look at this draft that's been written and they will give you their advice. We are working as neutral mediators, so we're not representing either party. And when you hire an outside attorney, they will represent just you and look at the agreement in just your interest. And so it's a good idea to have an attorney that represents you to give you their take on how good the agreement is, if anything should be tweaked, changed, added, subtracted. And so oftentimes clients will do that. And then they have to bring back the suggested changes to the table and agree on any further changes. When an agreement is ready to be signed by both parties, they take it to a notary and they sign it in front of a notary. And at that point, it is a legally binding contract essentially between the two parties. Even before you step foot in the courts or send any filings off to courts, it's protection. And that is the bulk of the mediation program, is getting through those 5 steps to your completed agreement. Now, once you have the agreement, you have to go through a court case and get a judge to dissolve your marriage, which I'll talk about in a second. And you know what you're walking away with. You know the property, the money, the debts, and the income, for the most part, that you are walking away with when you are starting your own independent household. And at that time, we found that it's really important to sit down with some kind of financial counselor to make sure that you know all of the basics of running a household by yourself. Because in relationships, we gravitate towards different roles. Oftentimes, one spouse is handling the household budget, groceries or rent or utilities, or the other spouse may be handling investments. One person knows about the real estate, the other doesn't. Taxes. So when you're running your own household, everything, it's really good to make sure you know exactly how you're proceeding in terms of proper budgeting, putting your money in the best kind of investments, etc. And so step 6 of the Alpha program is each party sitting down separately, one spouse with their financial counselor. You set up that appointment to talk through and make sure you have the best idea of how to handle your finances and budgets. And the other spouse meets with a financial counselor as well. Step 7 of the Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation program is the court case. And everyone has to involve the courts in some way to get divorced because marriage is regulated by the state. So you need a judge to sign an order dissolving your marriage. Luckily, oftentimes there can be very little or no in-person court involvement. And so most of the work is already done. You've agreed on all of the terms of your divorce in that agreement that is signed. And so there is very little for a judge to say or decide, except for signing an order ending your marriage and incorporating, usually, the terms of that agreement. So oftentimes, the court case asking for a judge to give you a divorce can be done by mail. Can all be done by mail, sometimes just a minimal court appearance to say, yes, we came to this agreement and this is what we wanted. It's a huge burden and stress taken away by not having to deal with court in much of a way in person. And how long does a divorce take is another question that we often get. And it really varies, and it's surely going to vary state to state. It's going to vary county to county within a state. So I can't give you a definite answer here. The consultation is where you can get that more specific answer. However, you can know that mediation is going to be one of the quickest ways to get divorced. It's going to be one of the quickest ways to come to an agreement on all of the terms of your divorce in a real proper way. Litigation, as I mentioned before, can take years, and that is not an exaggeration. There is a lot of work that goes into a litigation case. Some of it seems unnecessary to the divorcing parties, but the legal process that litigation goes through means a lot of paperwork, a lot of what's called discovery, which is before you're even getting to a court, and it often involves lots of expensive experts. Court cases take a long time, judges take a long time, and lawyers can take a long time to do work, respond, or create more work for the other side as a part of a strategy. And so years is not a crazy thing to say when you're talking about litigation. With mediation, I know in Pennsylvania, in some cases, it can be a few months. Now, that's very certain circumstances. Oftentimes, it can be within 6 months that you're divorced from start to finish as quick as possible. So it varies by state and it varies by county. The process of the mediation sessions and deciding all of the terms of the divorce can be done rather quickly. And we think we schedule things in a way where mediation sessions are usually a couple weeks apart so that you have time to reflect. You have time to look over the notes that are sent out from your mediators, and you're not rushing through the process. But at the same time, we want to get you through this limbo period. It's a very difficult emotional limbo period and financial, parenting, everything else limbo period as quickly as possible. For the most part, that's the healthiest way to do it. So usually you're looking at 2, 3, 4, 5 months that the mediations will be spread across, including signing that final agreement and having all of the terms of your divorce set in stone. So those are the 7 steps of our program that really go through in detail everything you're going to need to think about having to do with divorce. You're also going to need to effectuate the terms of the divorce, so selling a house, appraising property, or appraising antiques, things like that. You may need realtors. You may need attorneys that can do title changes. You may want to revise your will or create a trust of some kind. There may be a lot of alternative professional services that are required to effectuate the terms of your divorce. And we have a wealth of relationships with people over the years and a referral directory of people in our area. And we can always point you in the right direction if we can't ourselves answer the question or you can't yourself do the work. Like selling the house. If you need a realtor, we know people. If you need someone to write up a will, we have attorneys that we know that we can provide names for. So you're never going to be alone going through this very difficult transition when you're working with the Alpha Center. And I think that's another real value that we bring that is not repeated in other programs. You also have a team of professionals that have been working together for a long time. We're not just assembling an accountant here, a financial advisor there, and a parenting therapist. These are people that work in the Alpha team, and so the transition between mediations and the information that's passed on is seamless. You are working with one entity that is supporting you all along the way. And we're not going to let you forget anything through this transition. So I hope this has been valuable in terms of answering some questions about going through a divorce, going through a transition from one household to 2 households. And if you are considering divorce, I would highly suggest calling up the Alpha Center or sending a message through alpha-divorce.com to set up a consultation. It's free. It's no pressure to sign on right away, and you're going to get even more valuable information than what you're getting here, more details specific to what your situation is. And you can ask specific questions, and we will give you as good answers as we can with the information that we have at the time of the consultation. So, my name is Matt Pillischer. I'm an attorney mediator with the Alpha Center, and I hope you've enjoyed this broadcast. We do these divorce educationals the first and third Wednesday of every night, and usually it's not just me. We have guests on to talk about various aspects of divorce, divorce and finances, children and divorce, divorce and wellness, taking care of yourself through the process, litigation versus mediation, some meatier details about what litigation looks like versus the mediation program, and other topics as they relate to divorce.